Bishop Scharfenberger, you've been here about a month. How would you characterize the state of the Diocese of Buffalo when you arrived?
First of all, I did not know quite what to expect because I really hadn't been briefed at all. All I knew was what I read in the papers, to tell you the truth. And what I was not sure is would I encounter division, would I encounter anger, and what I've encountered instead was a lot of hurt, but at the same time a tremendous desire to move forward. I've seen a lot of people that they're looking to turn the corner. They're looking to see what can be done constructively now, what can be done to kind of open up doors, to promote healing. And what that drew out of me was, quite frankly, my fatherly heart. You know, I see myself as being asked to help a family that is hurting, and that's what I really want to do. I want to listen. I've been spending most of my time trying to get to know people, you know, around the diocese. I've spoken with priests, lay people. As you know, I was at the gathering of lay people that were there, MTR, I think we call it, MRT. I get Brooklyn Trains, I get it mixed up. And that was a wonderful event too. And I see so much, really so much enthusiasm. People really want to help, want to come together, and want to form bonds again. You know, there's a lot of healing. Yeah, there have been divisions. I don't know if I can characterize it as like red states and blue states. It's not like two sides. There's a lot of perspectives, you know. Some people focus on, you know, health, morale of clergy and so forth. Some people are very concerned about, you know, victim survivors and our outreach towards them. Some people are very concerned about management issues, you know, transparency files and so forth we've talked about. I'm trying to get a sense of like what the structure is of the internal structure of the DAO, who's accountable to whom, and to make sure that things are sort of clear, you know, and again, whatever it is that will whatever doubts, anxieties, fears people have, to try to address them. So what I'm really trying to do is a lot of listening, and I want to respond as best as I can. Also realize that I'm temporary, and what I do, you know, is I'm not probably going to be here for the long haul, but you know, issues that will have to be addressed pretty soon would be the financial situation of the diocese. So in terms of possibility of bankruptcy, which is very real, and a decision will be made very soon as to how we'll go. I'm also concerned about how that affects people who have litigation going on right now for the CVA. So I want to make sure everything's done in a fair, reasonable way. And I guess what I do sense is a certain impatience. You know, we should have done a lot of things yesterday, and I want to do things in a fair and deliberative way so that we get it right. You know, so what I'm also trying to do is walk with people and assure them that we will do what we have to do, but we're going to have to be patient to get it done right.
What do you think the biggest, you know, sort of headliner issue here is facing the diocese when it comes to all of this abuse and these allegations?
Well, quite frankly, you know, we've heard the word cover up a lot. We've heard the word secrecy a lot, and I just wanted to be said that there is no criminality is not entitled to secrecy. You know, and I also want it to be understood that I really basically have a zero tolerance policy for any form of behavior that is criminal. And I hope that we can move more in that direction to increase that confidence that there will be no hidden corners. You know, that I think our best, one of the things that, you know, our faith tells us, you know, Christ says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, that we have nothing to fear from the truth. You know, and that's what I think is important, that we understand that there will be that candor, there will be that transparency. So I want to move in that direction to the extent that there's any concerns that that's not the case.
Have you opened up the archive, read through the binder or anything?
Well, yeah, I've heard that there's a lot of binders around. I heard about the Black Book and so forth. You know, I want to be able to know what is in the files to the best I possibly can. So one of the first things I did was to ask for from Sister Regina, who's our chancellor, you know, where are the files and what's in them and so forth. But what I've decided to do is actually to form a task force And I think it's important to bring together professional people who have expertise in archives and in forensics and in file management and in law and legal issues. Bring them together, get some good expert eyes on what in fact is the status, and to advise me as to ways in which we can create an understanding of transparency. And anybody that needs to have access, legitimate access, should be able to. Certainly anybody in as you know, the Attorney General is already investigating all of the files, so there is an oversight that is going on. And I hope that that will reveal anything that that needs to be, you know. I also understand that in the publication of names, the publication of lists, that there might be some interest in getting more information about the history of priests that have been, you know, engaged in the diocese, and I'd like to work in that direction to bring some of that information out, just so that people are aware, who need to be aware. Yeah.
We've been spending some time in court here the last few weeks, and there was a court battle here between the diocese and some of the plaintiffs' attorneys, and I just want to read you what one of the plaintiffs' attorneys wrote about, you know, this issue of the secret files. He said, the Pope just came out with an encyclical lifting pontifical secrecy, saying we're going to air all our laundry out and we're going to show things and be open and transparent. The bishop has said the same thing, but we have lawyers here coming in and saying, let's keep everything confidential.
Yeah, and lawyers are going to do that. You know, that is part of what their job is going to be. But here's my point. First of all, let's talk a little bit about secret files. There is, as you know, in canon law, let me just say it this way, there really are no secret files. And as I said before, that criminality is not entitled to secrecy. So anything that our files would contain that would hint of criminal behavior, if that's the case, I want to be transparent and exposed, okay? The so-called secret archive that canon law speaks of, Canon 489, Secretum Archivum, if to use a Latin word, really does not contain any priest files. There are no priest files in the so-called secret archive. What typically they contain, and I understand ours actually do, would be records that would be really for the public good, meant to be kept safe. For example, like an exorcism or a clandestine marriage, a marriage that was resolved but not in the external forum, you know. But there are no clergy files in our so-called secret files. So they really are not secret. Confidential, I would make a distinction between secret and confidential. As you know, it's standard corporate practice, and this would also be true for teachers, that there is some confidentiality that is expected by anybody who is an employee in regular files. So, for example, HIPAA records, you know, medical records, and maybe attorney-client that would be protected by those things, Social Security, you know, things like that. But biographical data, history of assignment, or even for that matter, if there has been letters that are supporting somebody or complaining about somebody, some of that information, you know, perhaps could be shared. Certainly with anybody that had an actual case, we will respond if we're subpoenaed and we're asked to produce files. We will respond to the legitimate needs of a plaintiff to be able to have access to information that they need to make their case. That would be my approach, and I would certainly advise attorneys to do the same. Of course, you have attorneys on both sides that are working this out, so I can't comment on litigation, specific litigation, but you know, we obviously expect, if the diocese, for example, is sued in the CVA case, if we do go the route of litigation, I would expect attorneys to put up a vigorous case. That's what they do. You know, I would prefer not to have to do it that way. You know, my appeal would be to anybody who has experienced abuse in any way should never be afraid to come forward. And you don't have to go to civil court. You can come right to the church tribunal, and we will investigate.
Now, what do you say to people who said, I did that, under the previous bishop and I was ignored, or this was
Do it
handled.
again. I'm sorry about that. I have no control over the past, and I'm not dismissing it in any way, and I can only say my apologies, my regrets, if that was your experience, but I can only say as long as I'm here, do not be afraid. Please, you come forward and let me hear from you.
And I want to read you just a statement. I put something out online today just asking Catholics if any questions they like answered here.
Sure.
A few survivors did identify themselves as survivors here. And this goes to that issue of transparency. This person said, I feel that I should be able to see any documentation of numerous claims made from me or on my behalf since the 1990s. How were these documented? How was it all dealt with? Why was my abuser left as a pastor for years? Why was it hidden? Am I, as a survivor, able to obtain all the information the diocese has on my abuser?
Absolutely. If a survivor it puts that question out and is interested, should come forward, and we'll do whatever we can to let that person know what they need to know and want to know.
What about the greater church here? There's been some dioceses that have posted these files online as far as where they were transferred, the complaints they got, and certainly some of it was redacted, but
absolutely, and we're moving in that direction as well too. And I've spoken to several people about how we can do that. The Milwaukee Diocese, for example, and I think the Archdiocese of Chicago have an excellent model of doing that, because that's going to take time, and we'll have to have some protocol as to which comes out first. The older ones, the newer ones, but that's definitely a direction. And I also want to do that in Albany as well too. We're moving in that direction. Yeah.
Have you sat down at all with Siobhan?
I haven't. Siobhan has not approached me. Does she want to sit down and speak with me?
I don't know.
I don't know. I understand she was at the, the gathering, but I haven't spoken with her yet. No.
What is the status of Father Richard Biernat?
Right now, he is under some form of a decree of penal sanction. I understand that Bishop Malone put out there that he wanted to make a retreat, and I believe he's done that too. And I will look forward to discussing his status with him going forward to see where that will go.
So you're saying he was actually penalized before
he
you got here?
He was put on a kind of a decree that prior to moving forward, Bishop expected him to make some form of a retreat, to take some time for reflection. And I believe that he's accomplished that. So I will be, I'm sure, meeting with him in the not too distant future to discuss what his ministry might entail.
Do you think that as a whistleblower here, it was right for him to be the one that's being punished here?
Well, that's a very good question, and I don't know exactly what it is that he was being punished for from Bishop Malone's point of view. I think, and I don't want to speak for Bishop Malone as to why he did what he did. Nor am I going to say that that's what I would have done.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to butt in here, Charlie. I know, sorry, but we shouldn't discuss personnel matters, please, publicly. Let's get, you need to do your proper.
Right, and again, I don't have access to information as to what it was that motivated Bishop Malone to do what he did. So I don't know his mind in that regard.
Right. Okay. So speaking of Bishop Malone here, we've been told that he plans to stay, at least in some capacity, in Buffalo and live. He's looking at the rectory of the cathedral and possibly spending could be thousands of dollars to renovate that.
I haven't heard that. I am not aware of that, and I know he's not in the diocese right now. He's taken some time off to be with friends and family, I believe, in Massachusetts, and I don't anticipate, I have not approved of any expenditures of any sort of construction or reconstruction, so that may be hearsay, but it's not something that I'm aware of, and I certainly would be aware if that was happening.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So would you be okay with something like that, or?
Well, it depends. Right now I think the climate is such that the decision he's made, to take some time off is appropriate. So, and going forward, particularly with the bankruptcy proceedings, all things will be on the table. If we go into bankruptcy, any sort of renovations or reconstruction is going to have to take account what the greater needs of the diocese are. And I'm sure we have plenty of places for residents if that's what he so desires. It'll really be up to the next bishop to decide what that would be, you know.
So at your introductory news conference, we asked you a few things. I just want to follow up.
Sure.
You said that you would look into the involvement of some of Bishop Malone's aides, Bishop Gross, auxiliary bishop, diocesan attorney Terry Connors. Have you come to any conclusions as far as their involvement in all this?
Exactly. You know, in order to come to conclusions, you have to have specific allegations of something that might have been some form of malfeasance or otherwise too. And until I have some specific allegations that there was malfeasance in any way, I can tell you right now that Bishop Gross has decided that he is going to retire, and I know from what he told me, he submitted his plans to retire, I think, as early as February, and that he is not involved in any administrative activity at this point. It's purely pastoral activity. So just if there's any questions about current involvement, you know, neither Bishop Malone nor Bishop Gross are. And as far as any past suspicions, allegations, if someone comes to me and specifically says this is something you have to look at, I have to see the specific, I can always do investigations in that regard. You know, as far as the law firm is concerned, again, show me what the specific concern is, and naturally I'll look into it if it looks suspicious.
Sure. Okay. We had one of our parishioners here had asked, has the bishop taken any action reform-wise other than this person says thoughts and prayers and hiring
Yeah,
a PR firm?
and as I said to you, I have already, right now, I have actually made some changes in the operation of the review board, which may not be publicized yet in terms of the composition, who was there. I want it to be completely independent. And in other words, there will be no bishop, no bishop's representatives sitting on the board, no attorneys. They will pretty much be operating, you know, with Judge Martocci. I expect to expand and maybe even flush, you know, rotate some of the membership. That's one thing. As I said to you, I've announced that I am going to form a task force in order to review the status of the files in terms of their integrity and access and custody. And that going forward as well, too, I want to be sure that everybody understands that we have a zero tolerance policy, and that there is no, we're not going to in any way encourage any sort of a scenario that hides criminal behavior. So the files will be, as I said, there's no, another thing I did too was in terms of custody of the files, to be sure that any access to files has to be through the chancellor and her archival assistant. So that even I myself do not want to be present in the file room or anybody else unless there's some form of surveillance or supervision, so to protect the integrity of the files. So all of those are changes that I have made since I've been here, and I will continue to do that. And as I get more advice from people, and in terms of the bankruptcy proceedings, we certainly move forward in making the decision, and which will be shortly forthcoming. So I've only been here a month, but I think you will see a lot more action in the next few weeks.
So speaking of zero tolerance here, this is a question from one of our viewers. There were multiple misconduct allegations against Father Joe Gatto, and we noticed that now he's listed as being reinstated back at St. Leo's Church and St. Benedict Church in Amherst. Why has he been allowed to?
Well, if in fact, see, this is if in fact allegations were made, and if in fact they went before the review board, and in fact the review board advised the bishop that they did not lack sufficient substance to be able to be deemed actionable, then it would have gone to the previous bishop, I presume, that was their conclusion, and he must have accepted their conclusion. If any other allegations come forward, you know, or somebody wants to say that was not done properly, I invite them to come forward again. You know, no case is closed.
So you didn't make this decision and say, okay, we're going to do this?
I did not. No,
okay.
I did not.
And some of these controversial decisions obviously predate your arrival here. You know, you mentioned you're inviting people to come forward again,
Sure.
as painful as that might be.
Right.
should people expect, for you to are you going to go back and reevaluate some of these decisions?
Well, if there's a reason to, in other words, if I have no reason on the face to assume that the investigation that the review board, the preliminary investigation did was not done in a proper way, I can only presume regularity. And if the review board made a recommendation, even if it was disappointing perhaps to whoever presented the case, and there's no reason to suspect that it was done other than in a proper way, then I would accept, that's the way legal process operates. If more information comes out, if somebody says, no, they didn't look at this, new information, I want the review board to be able to operate without any hint of prejudice or I want it in a totally objective state. If someone has a reason to believe that that was not the case, I want to know about that. But going forward, that's the way we're going to operate. And if somebody has reason to suspect that it was not done that way, let me know. And we have, for example, in Albany, reopened cases again when new information came in.
Understanding, of course, if everything was handled in the right way, you probably wouldn't be sitting here, correct? I mean, there's a reason you were called in here to look at some of this stuff.
No, I was. That's not so. That is not true. I was called in because when a bishop resigns, or when a bishop is no longer a bishop, there has to be somebody put in to continue the administrative and pastoral work of the diocese. And I was selected by the Holy See to do this. I was not given any documentation or any marching orders that you're here to clean things up or anything. I was just told, be the administrator of the diocese, and accept it as is. It's like an as-is situation. So no, I was not sent with a particular mission. I obviously came into this with an awareness, as everybody has, of the challenges the diocese has been facing. But it was not contingent upon Bishop Malone is somehow being forced out. That was a resignation. People characterize it as a retirement. I'm not going to characterize it. But I had no particular agenda that I was sent here in order to address.
Now, obviously, the Vatican, before you came here, sent Bishop DiMarzio
here. There was
an
investigation, right.
They did an investigation,
right.
A report
was not
made.
privy to that. I was not given that.
In the interest of transparency, is that report ever going to be released to the people?
I have no
of
idea
Buffalo?
because I don't have possession of that. That is a report that was done by the Holy See. So it would be the Holy See that has possession of that and would be the one that would decide to release that or not. I mean, naturally, I spoke with Bishop DiMarzio. I have some idea, but I'm not in possession of that report, so I don't own it,
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting because it seems like it could be helpful to you as you're
Well, it might be,
evaluating.
but then again, I don't know what it contains, and I don't know whether or not how that would be interpreted, and that you'd have to deal with the Holy See on that.
So as far as
It would be different if I did the investigation. Yeah.
So as far as just looking, forward here, do you think you are going to be the one chosen to stay here, or are you sort of truly setting the table here?
Don't say that. No, every indication that I have is that my tenure in Albany, that's a Freudian slip, my tenure in Buffalo is time limited, and that it will be a short time, and that the Holy See is looking for a successor to Bishop Malone. That will not be me. I can't tell you what may happen. Precedentially, sometimes they do keep administrators on, sometimes they don't. So I don't know who I don't know what the Holy See knows that I don't know. But I was told that I'm here temporarily as apostolic administrator, and being an obedient son of our Holy Church, I'm doing what I was asked to do.
And just last question, if you're not the permanent person here, what kind of qualities do you think would serve this diocese?
Well, I think NTR said it very, very well, transparency, openness, a good listener, a person that is a healer, and a person that will work for the long term with people that aren't looking for healing and for moving forward, a positive vision. So I think all of those qualities that are really what I'm hearing from the people, I would agree with.